Hey.
Hey girl, how's it going?
Hey girl, hey.
Hi girl, hey.
I am
So
good. How are you?
I am fan diddly-tastic. It's a Friday night, just living my best life, talking to my BFF, having a hard seltzer. Just peak fall, I guess. I don't know.
Excellent.
Well, for those of you who do not know, my name is Madeline,
I'm Olivia.
and this is another episode of another picture show podcast. We are two sexy beasts who like to talk about movies that we love or that we fucking hate.
There's been a few that we have hated.
We've shat on a lot, like a lot of video or movies recently.
A lot of videos, yeah.
A lot of videos. Normally the premise is we review movies. However, typically I haven't seen them, or we just want to watch them together. But I never know what the movie is before the intro, so I have no preconceived notions of what we're going to watch this week until Olivia tells me.
So this week I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I thought that because this is kind of our last official spooky movie episode, I thought we could do a double feature.
Ooh.
This week I was thinking we could watch both The Shining and Dr. Sleep.
Oh, okay. So Doctor Sleep's kind of like the sequel to The Shining, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, isn't Doctor is my brain's working. Isn't Doctor Sleep about the kid from The Shining?
Danny, yes.
Danny, the one on the tricycle.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen The Shining. I don't know anything about Doctor Sleep.
That's fine.
All I know is, okay, sorry. The one thing I do know about Doctor Sleep is like The Shining is like something that, no, they explain that. I'm dumb. I think they explain in The Shining that The Shining is something that like certain people have. Like it's like a certain ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I guess Dr. Sleep's supposed to like play more into that in the movie. Cause like thinking back on when I watched The Shining, he like does like his little shine thing like a couple of times. Like the only one time where it like really mattered was when he got the property manager, whoever that one dude was, to like be like, oh no, Daddy's in trouble, and he like gets on a plane and he's like, oh god, I hope he's not dead yet, and like that's all I remember.
Yeah.
This is the whole movie.
I have only seen The Shining once. I think it'll be good for me to rewatch it and be able to discuss it with the context of Dr. Sleep as well, because I've watched that one pretty recently. I thought it would be fun, so we could, throw it back, our first pre-90s movie.
Oh yeah, I was like, what year did Fight Club come out?
And then a more recent one.
Little contrast.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast. A little Venn diagram moment.
Old spooky and new spooky.
I want a Venn diagram. Old spoopy, new spoopy, and then like the titles underneath, and then in the middle it's just like The Shining question mark.
Yeah. Stephen King.
More tricycles in the second movie.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, it's all about bikes.
Dr. Sleep is actually the name of his bicycle repair shop.
How long ago did you see The Shining?
2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
Like I'd never seen it prior to that, so my sister I think was watching it, and then I tuned in and we watched it. And I mean, I don't think it was that scary. Like I mean, people are like, oh, I mean, Stephen King is an amazing writer, but like I guess the book is probably much scarier or much like more chilling than the movie, because like I was watching this movie and I was like, okay, so like it's kind of creepy that this dude's going crazy, but I wasn't like scared, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't I wasn't afraid for my life.
Yeah, like I said, I've only watched it once, and I watched it like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, huh. So I think it'll be good, like I said, for me to watch it again, to like really soak it in and have an actual take on it, because I think the first time I watched it, it was all fresh, but I had the like pop culture references already in my head watching it. But now
Yeah,
that I've
Red
seen it
Rum.
once, yeah, I can like watch it again with all the context. Having seen it before, and then also having seen Doctor Sleep. I think it'll be fun.
Is it Ewan McGregor in Doctor Sleep?
Yes.
Okay. I love Ewan McGregor. I'm gonna have a good time.
Yeah, so I guess with that, we can go watch both of those movies and then come back and talk about them.
Look at you, science fiction double picture feature show.
I mean, this is another picture show, double feature.
Our title does
Do
come
it.
from Rocky Horror.
No, not at all. We hate that movie.
Fuck that movie. It's not one of my favorites of all time ever.
No.
I have no personal relationship with that movie at all, so it's completely ironic. If
I've
you
never seen it, so I'm just kidding. I have definitely seen Rocky Horror. Okay, so with that, we're gonna go watch The Shining and Doctor Sleep, and we'll be back with our review of those two movies in 3, 2, 1. And we're back.
Yay!
We watched.
Man, that is a lot of movies.
It is a lot of
film.
movies. It is. I guess the best way to go about this is to start with The Shining and then kind of get to Doctor Sleep afterwards. So the first half of this review will be The Shining, and the second half will be Doctor Sleep. Does that sound like a plan?
Works for me, dog.
Cool. The Shining is a 1980 psychological horror film produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick and co-written with novelist Diane Johnson. The film is based on Stephen King's 1977 novel of the same name and stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Scatman Crothers, and Danny Lloyd. First off, do you want to just give a little recap of The Shining?
Just The Shining? Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
So, we got Jack Torrance. Jack's this high school teacher. He's writing a book. He gets this job opportunity over the winter. I'm like, you're a teacher. How can you do this over the winter? But whatever. Like, we ignore that.
It's all virtual. So
yeah, it's in the 70s they did like online classes. Yeah, they had Zoom calls and everything. They're just like us. Before they left, Danny had some weird visions, so you kind of already know Danny's a weird kid. He's got some weird stuff going on. He has visions. He has a little worm friend named Tony. So he's just like a little different. So they're on their way up. You can kind of tell like Jack's like an impatient guy. Like he thinks he's like hot shit. He wants to write this book. He wants to like have like the perfect scenery to write this book. So what better place than a snowed-in hotel in the middle of Colorado? That's my ideal writing spot. So he shows up with his fam, and he meets the hotel manager guy. He's like, hey, by the way, you're not going to kill your family, right? And Jack's like, no, definitely not. So they take a little tour. Danny meets this guy in the kitchen. Dick, right? That's his name?
Yes.
Okay, so he meets Dick, and Dick and him are like, like they're like sussing each other out. And so as like the hotel's like closing down, everybody's like, hey, by the way, like one of these caretakers a few years ago like chopped up his family. So like we're just putting it all out there. This place gets weird. And so Jack and the fam are like, oh yeah, totally. You got it. And then naturally weird shit goes down. But before everybody leaves, Dick pulls Danny aside and he's like, by the way, you got the Shining, you can see ghosts. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, they're not going to hurt you. Bounces. And they can like telepathically communicate. So to wrap this up real quick, Jack just goes fucking bonkers, goes after his family with an axe. Danny has multiple visions. And he like shines like a help signal to Dick from like 1,000 miles away. He's down in Florida. Jack like gets absorbed into like the evilness of the hotel. Meanwhile, Wendy and Danny are just trying to survive. It's snowy. There's a maze chase. Here's Johnny. I found out was from like a late night show. That was like a late night show reference.
Johnny Carson.
Yes, so I didn't know that until I rewatched the movie. And then the hotel wins. Wendy and Danny escape, but they get Jack's soul, and he's forever the groundskeeper. And it's a lot of like mind play, like you don't know like what's real and like what's going on in Jack's head, and like has he always been there? And this is just like a reincarnation. Like it's very trippy because, you know, he meets some ghosts and they're like, nah, you've always been here. And he's like, I definitely haven't. And then, but then he like, he feels so like at peace or at home or at like home in this hotel. So like he gives in to like the evilness of the hotel and like the darkness or whatever. It just like consumes him, and he has like this break, and his soul is stuck for all eternity in the Overlook Hotel. And Danny's scarred for life, as we find out in Doctor Sleep.
Indeed. Yes, that was a very good overlook of the Shining.
Ooh. Good one.
What did you think of The Shining?
I liked it. So I'm much more, as far as like horror films, I think I've said this before, I'm much more into like thrillers than I am like jump scares, and like sure, like gory stuff, like, you know, Final Destination, like that's okay. Like it's fun to be like, ooh, they're cheating death, but death's coming to get them. But anything that's like Nightmare on Elm Street or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm like, I get the appeal, but I prefer thrillers over that. Like I prefer like hauntings, but I don't need like ghosts like right up in my grill. You know what I mean? So I liked it. I like kind of the complexity of like the film itself. Like, I mean, I don't know much about Stanley Kubrick, except everybody's like, oh my God, he's amazing. And he does no wrong. I mean, I looked up like one review and everybody was like, he's perfect. And but the one thing I did read up and I thought was funny was that Stephen King did not like Jack Nicholson as Jack, because I knew this before. Stephen King wrote the book based on his stay at a hotel in Colorado, and they were like the last guests before it closed for the winter. So when he wrote The Shining, he was kind of basing the character Jack off of himself as like a struggling writer, and like, you know, if he was like isolated, like would he have some sort of like break because like he's struggling under the quote unquote like pressures of being like the breadwinner and like the writer, etc. So I like that. I think it's funny that he didn't like Jack Nicholson, even though Jack Nicholson, that's one of Jack Nicholson's
Well,
most
I know that
iconic
he
roles.
didn't like Stanley Kubrick's like adaptation.
Yeah, he hated
all.
the adaptation.
He didn't like the movie at all, and we can get into that a little bit more in depth. But keep going with your thoughts on the movie.
So I'll throw this in now before we get to it, but I liked Doctor Sleep better.
I did too.
Okay, great. I was like, are we about to fight?
No, I was actually really worried about this review. I was like, I really hope that she liked Doctor Sleep, because the few people that I've talked to about that movie, they were like, I hated it. And I'm like, why? I thought it was super fun, but we'll get into that when we talk about Doctor Sleep. But I
know it's so hard to hold back. I just want to be like, yeah, The Shining happened anyway, Doctor Sleep.
I know. But I also really liked The Shining. I think it serves its purpose in the overall Shining epic that is whatever Stephen King was going
it's
for.
It's a great alley-oop for Doctor Sleep to come in and just spike and score a goal.
I know that this is like probably terrible of me to say as like a film person, someone who studied film and someone who's supposed to like have the highest regard for Stanley Kubrick. I think that he did an amazing job, but I also know the things that are missing from the movie, from the book, or like what was missing from the book. I think that it could have been better, but that's probably horrible of me to say. But
I don't care.
I don't know. When there's like so many just like videos and books and like articles tearing this movie apart piece by piece, like in a good way, like trying to like figure out all the different like symbolisms. And
I watched one
things
today that was crazy. Like they were, I mean, I don't want to get too much into we can get into the conspiracy theories if we want, but one of the ones was like I really felt like it was grasping at straws coming from like a person who has not read The Shining. So I think they were trying to focus just on, well, I was hoping they were just focusing on the movie because they were like pulling some stuff out of like way left field, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? So Jack had like previously like broken or dislocated Danny's shoulder or arm or something like that. He hurt Danny, and so he was drunk when he did that, so he was sober, and like he was being kind of like tormented by like the temptations of drinking, and like when he finally like took a drink, that's kind of when he like officially, like in my mind I was like, that's when he officially snapped, was when he like was talking to the bartender and he was like took the drink or whatever, and it was like literally crossing the Rubicon. I was like, there's no going back for this dude. He had hurt Danny in a drunken rage or whatever. People were speculating that it wasn't just like physical abuse, like it was sexual abuse.
Yeah.
There was like this like weird conspiracy theory, and they're like pointing out all these like the bear here, and then there was like a bear in the sun.
I think I watched the same video.
We probably did.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, and then you see like the dopey sticker is missing from like the doctor office door or whatever, and I was like. And he was like, well, people think that Steven Kubrick, or whatever his name, Stanley Kubrick's perfect and he doesn't have continuity errors. And I was like, it's a very complicated movie. There is a high probability that there is probably one or two continuity errors, not major ones.
What I will say about that is Stanley Kubrick is like, he's very meticulous. So I think a lot of those things are on purpose, but there are probably like one or two things that are people are just like reading way too far into.
Right.
But with the like sexual assault thing, I think that's more plausible for the movie than it might be in the book. I think the book focuses more on Jack's alcoholism and his struggle with alcoholism than it does in the movie. Like the movie, it mentions it. He struggles with it for like a brief second when he's talking to Lloyd, but it's not really the main focus of the movie, and it's more like Danny being like something traumatizing happening to Danny and then things kind of like unraveling. And Jack in the book is more likable, is more kind of he starts out normal for lack of a better word. He starts out normal, like just a nice guy. He goes to the Overlook, and his descent into madness and his descent into like wanting to kill his family is a lot slower and progressive, and you can see it more clearly as his struggle with like alcoholism and isolation escalates. In the movie, he kind of starts out as a dick, Jack Nicholson
he hates his wife and his
he's
son.
Like he's a douchebag from the beginning, so the descent isn't as slow. It just I don't know. That's my read. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but
I mean, that makes more sense because like Stephen King had like 400, 500 pages to like meticulously like describe Jack's descent into madness, where if you try and translate 400 to 500 pages into a movie, like, I mean, it was already 2.5 hours. Like it was pushing 3 hours. So like I feel like they're like, let's just speed this up real quick as much as we can.
So in regard to the like sexual abuse theme, I do think that's more it's probably closer to what Kubrick was going for in the movie than what King was going for in the book. And so they're kind of like coming at two different themes and like running with them. And I think they both did. Obviously, I haven't read the book all the way through. I've started it, but I haven't read it all the way through. There's merit to both. I don't think Stephen King is wrong for being upset with Stanley Kubrick for his interpretation, because obviously it's like his story and his vision isn't what Kubrick did. But Kubrick is also an artist and like did something great with his own vision. And I think when we start talking about Dr. Sleep, we can talk about how like Mike Flanagan was able to kind of combine those two visions, and I think we'll get into it, but I think he did a really good job doing that. I guess, what did you think of the overall themes of the movie The Shining? Like, what did you get out of it, and how did you feel it was effective?
So, I mean, I'm still thinking about the conspiracy theory. Somebody was saying that, last conspiracy theory that cracked me up. I'm sure we watched the same video, so you probably know what I'm going to say, was like people thought that Stanley Kubrick was involved in like filming like the moon landing, like faking the moon landing.
Oh.
So people thought that this was like his like artistic like like repentance or like confession, basically. Like he was trying to be like through the movie try to be like, I didn't want to do it but I had to, like
It's like Danny's sweater after he gets like assaulted.
yes, the Apollo
it's like a rocket Apollo 11, and it could either be like he's confessing to the moon landing thing, or it's like a phallic symbol of a rocket like facing his mouth. It's like, I mean,
yeah, we're definitely putting a
don't
trigger warning
think
at the
that the moon
beginning
landing was fake, but
no.
So,
but it's just like
maybe
really
it's
funny.
just
Sorry,
like
that's the last thing I thought of. I was like, I just keep thinking about that, so I'm like, I know that's not right. But okay, so
it could just be like an inside joke, like he's like poking fun at people who think that, but
right, yeah, exactly. I think as far as like the book, or not the book, the movie's concerned, like it talked a lot in the beginning about like a lot of violent things. Like it talked a lot, like in the beginning it talked about like the former groundskeeper, caretaker murdering his family, like his twin daughters, and like murdering his wife. And then it also talks about how it's like buried on an Indian burial ground, or it's built on an Indian burial ground. It just talks about, and like everybody seems on edge. And there's and another conspiracy theory. Sorry, now I'm like thinking about like it's just like very prominent in my head. That like the guy, like the hotel manager, the theory is like he's like in cahoots with like the demons or the spirits or whatever you want to call them, like of the hotel, and he like specifically screens people who seem to be like the most likely to like succumb to their will, I guess.
yeah.
So that was the other thing. But as that aside, I'm gonna stop talking. I swear that's the last one. So I think in my head, I think it's talking about how kind of like history, like if you don't really focus on that history, like it repeats itself.
Yeah.
Like if you don't like look back and learn from your past, like you're just gonna keep going. It seems like Jack kind of like was, and also like with his like abuse of like Danny, like that was like something he never, like he got like sober, but like he still struggled with that. Like I don't think he ever really like fully addressed or like came to terms or really got help besides the alcoholism, which is like a good thing to, if you have like a substance abuse problem and you get help, that's a good thing. But he never really like seemed to have gone through like any sort of like process dealing with like that, because like that's a major thing for like a child to go through. And then it doesn't seem like Danny got any help for it. Like he's like, it seems like he's like, who knows like when the shine, like he got like, he started
kind of
having
like
the shine,
generational demons. So the ending shot where we see what looks like Jack Nicholson's character in the party with the rest of the, like a bunch of people at the hotel, a lot of people interpret that as, oh, he's always been part of the hotel. But there's another interpretation of like, no, that's just someone else from his family from the past who was also sucked into the hotel. And it because that's also kind of the other family that was mentioned, the guy that murdered his family before previously. There's two people that come up, two ghosts with the same name. So kind of saying like two different people from the same family kind of coming to the hotel and being sucked in as like generational thing. And we kind of see that with Danny going back to the hotel, which that's different from the book, but yeah, I agree.
I know, I don't know which one I believe, because like I like the first one where it's like he's always been there, like that just in a weird way like feels more satisfying to me, because like I mean like this is one of those movies where I am much more able to push aside like suspend disbelief. Like I don't know why some movies I'm like I can't do it. Like Us, for some reason I was like, where'd they get those jumpsuits? Where'd they get the shears? Like I want to know what Michaels they rated, because
it's more dealing with like psychological stuff and like the descent into madness, so it's easier to, it's like you can accept things because it's like, oh, that's probably some sort of apparition, or like, you know what I mean,
right,
you don't know what's real and what's not.
Exactly. And then it's like, so I you know, I was more accepting of like the weird stuff going on, so that's why I think I want the first option, like, or the first like largely supported interpretation. But I also think the second one makes a lot of sense because, like, it's a small world. Like, I'm sure, you know, it's quite possible that somebody in a previous generation stayed at that hotel and got, you know, had similar problems and, you know, descended into madness and is part of the hotel forever. I'm still vibing with the first interpretation though.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
It's kind of like the caretaker becomes the bartender is another theme throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So the like bartender Lloyd. Weird side note. I think it's funny that the character, the actor that plays Danny, his name is Danny Lloyd,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like Danny and then Lloyd is the bartender.
Lloyd the bard. Yeah.
It's dumb, but probably has no relevance. I just thought it was interesting. But yeah, so like the caretaker becomes the bartender. So the bartender Lloyd in The Shining was probably the person that before that went mad at some point and was the caretaker and became the bartender. And then in Dr. Sleep, we see that Jack, the previous caretaker, became Lloyd.
Right. I just like it. I just like it, man.
There's just a lot of details in the movie that I can appreciate. Like I said, Stanley Kubrick is very meticulous, so I do think that a lot of things that people pick up on or notice like are intentional. And
there are some film fanatics out there because watching that one, I only watched one like analysis video. It was like, first of all, it was 30 minutes long. I was like, why am I watching this?
Yeah, it was a lot of bear imagery, a lot of phallic imagery. Some of it was like pretty convincing, I'd say.
I really wasn't sold on like the bear is, or the guy in the dog costume is Danny. Like somebody said that.
No, I don't think that. I don't know. I haven't done enough research on that specific image to know like what Kubrick was going for, and I don't know if it's in the books. So please don't attack me if I'm wrong on any of this. But I think that in particular is supposed to be kind of just like a shock thing for Shelley Duvall's character, because I think those are the only ghosts that she sees, and I think that's kind of a representation of her fear of what happened to Danny.
She sees the guy with the glass who's like, great party, and his like
head that's
split
true.
Open.
Yeah, that's true. Then I'm wrong. Never mind.
You fool!
I don't know.
You didn't watch it.
I did. I watched it twice, and I watched it back to back. I watched The Shining and Dr. Sleep back to back, and it actually made it like
no, ma'am, I did
feel
not.
Super. It made it super like satisfying. I feel to watch it all together. It just made a lot more sense. I wouldn't recommend it for just casual viewing, but because it's like 6 hours of film.
I was gonna say that's a long time, my friend.
Yep, but it was fun. What were there any specific kind of like visual things that caught your interest or that you liked, disliked?
I liked I kind of liked the mirrors. There was a lot of mirrors in this movie. I was focusing, so I watched Dr. Sleep first and then I watched The Shining.
Interesting.
Because I'd already seen The Shining like a few years ago. So I watched Dr. Sleep first. Like I said, thoroughly enjoyed it. Moving on. Watched The Shining. And so I was like, so it was funny because like they have in Dr. Sleep, they have some like mirror stuff as well, but like not as much as in The Shining. For example, like, you know, red rum in the mirror is murder. Kind of like when he was like making out with that hot lady, the truth was like reflected. Like the truth seems to be like reflected upon you, like in the mirror, like the truth is revealed. Because like he says red rum and then, you know, Shelley Duvall looks in the mirror, it says murder, like I just said. Creepy ghost lady. And then also like when that one scene that creeps me out the most was when, you know, Jack's like sitting on the bed and Danny's like walks in and he's like reaching out to him like, and like I'm wiggling my fingers in a creepy fashion. And like Danny's like, I don't want to. But like you can see Jack's like face in the mirror and he is like, he's not looking well, y'all. So it's like kind of like, I guess it kind of shows like the true like the truth just in general. So I
Mhm.
liked that a lot. So part of me liked, but also didn't like that they didn't really talk much about The Shining, like The Shine. Like it just,
Yeah.
like it was mentioned, what like the name of it was mentioned once. Like Dick was like, "Oh yeah, I call it Shining," and Danny was like, "I'm a little boy, I don't understand anything."
Mhm.
But I guess it didn't play as big of a role as I figured it would because it's called The Shining. But at the same time, like it's supposed to be about more than just Danny's abilities, so I kind of had to let that one go.
Yeah. I think, I mean, he mentions that the Shining can also be like part of a place. And so I think that's kind of like building up why the Overlook is the way it is, and like why
Mm,
it has so many ghosts and like feeds off of guests that come, and the isolation that they and the fear that they experience, similar to how like the True or Not does in Doctor Sleep.
yeah.
Um,
I think that is like kind of a weird like thought, like question slash thought. Like, so it's pretty obvious how people like descend into madness being like the only person in this, like shut up in this hotel for, you know, many, many months, like 6 months or something like that. But I guess what got me was like, how did they get all of these guests? Like, I understand a lot of them were from like, they're dressed in like 1920s clothes. So it's like, was there like a big thing that happened at this hotel and a lot of people died? Like a lot of people went crazy? Or is this just kind of like back to the photo, like were all these people just there this whole time, and like for some reason the default setting is like 1921 or 24 or whatever.
I mean, that could, if we're if we're gonna think about the like generational thing too, it could be like these were the people who were here with like Jack's ancestor, and they're kind of like coming back because of him, and because Danny's related to them too, like
Mm.
Danny has the Shining, so like they're kind of feeding off of Danny, who doesn't know how to use his ability yet. And I don't know if this is part of the book or not, but there's like another film adaptation of The Shining where it's like revealed that like Tony is actually Danny from the future, like helping Danny like kind of navigate that time in his
Ooh.
life.
Hmm.
I haven't looked into that too much, so I don't want to like talk about that too much, but it's just a theory that like the hotel is feeding off of Danny's Shining,
Mm.
and kind of reflecting back on Jack, who's also part of it. But yeah, I don't know if
6.7.
that makes any sense. I'm kind of just rambling at this point. Tony and
I mean, like I
and
said, I also haven't read the books, so I don't know about the Danny is Tony thing, but
I should have done more homework.
yeah, somebody said that
Should've-
like, I know we should have busted down some more conspiracy theories. That would have been
just watched all of the like Shining ending explained videos that are out there and
oh my
read the books
god.
and
I literally
all
in
the-
YouTube today at work, I just typed in The Shining. I didn't type anything else. I hit enter. No trailers, no like pirated copies showed up. It was all like The Shining explained, The Shining analysis, and they're all like the same length as the movie. So I was like, okay. There is a lot to like pick at and like look into. So I understand, but at the same time I'm like, this movie came out what, 40 years ago?
Yeah, well, I think
Am I
because
saying
of
that?
Doctor Sleep coming out like last year, it kind of revitalized people's interest in it, and so all the new YouTubers, film like video essay people out there had to like give their take, which is what we're doing. So we're no better, but
True. True. But we're just giving, well, I guess we did talk about some conspiracy theories, so I guess I'm gonna shit on myself too. Like, but what cracked me up, I was watching this like conspiracy like analysis video, and I was like, oh wow, this is pretty recent if they brought Dr. Sleep into this, because they mentioned it like a couple times, and then I look, it was literally published 5 days ago.
Yeah.
I was like, why are we still talking about this? But I'm talking about it just to get to Dr. Sleep, though.
Yes. Before we get to Doctor Sleep, though, I want to ask one more thing. How did like watching this movie, having gone through quarantine and like COVID and stuff, resonate with you?
So, okay. Not that I currently am interested in supporting Amazon. If delivery services like couldn't get to me, like I guess I couldn't see like murdering someone, but then again, like I have not been stuck in a snowed-in hotel for several months with my family. That you never know what's going to happen in those situations. But if you no internet, no Amazon, like nothing to deliver you like new hobby, like shit to start a new hobby, like all you have is like, it's like one of those things. Okay, here is my analogy of it. It's like when you're getting ready to go on a really long ass road trip and you're a child and your family's like, okay, like this is going to be an 8-hour road trip. Like, I hope you have stuff to entertain you. And you're like, oh yeah, totally. And you only pack like one book. This is before iPods. This is before music, like headphones and shit. Like, well, obviously like Walkmans and stuff, but like CD players, you have your one Avril Lavigne CD. And then you get bored and you just start fighting with your siblings because like they put their foot on you or whatever. Like you're just like annoyed because you don't have anything to do and they minorly inconvenienced you. So you need to like let out that like energy that you could have had doing something else.
Yeah.
Like all Jack had theoretically, besides like caring for the hotel, which he definitely didn't fucking do.
Sorry,
I got really mad about that because he had that whole rant with Lloyd where he was like, oh, the white man's burden. I was like, listen here, bitch. I was like, you have
Wendy
not done
doing
jack shit. Right? I was like, you've just been complaining and being like fucking murderous for the last 2 hours. And your wife
making
has
a lot
been
of eyebrow
keeping this place
faces
afloat.
that I don't appreciate.
Right, exactly. So anyway, all Jack had was like writing and like theoretically taking care of this hotel, which he definitely did not do that. So he couldn't write because he didn't have any inspiration, writer's block, totally get it. But he didn't choose or didn't have anything else to like occupy his like mind, and that's what it's kind of like idle hands are like the devil's playthings. Like that's where that kind of like phrase comes from. It's like when you're bored, you just like do random shit, and sometimes that gets you in trouble.
Yeah.
So he was the quote unquote bored, like he was frustrated, he couldn't write, he hates his wife and child. He had nothing else to do, and so the hotel was like, give me a soul, bitch. And then and then he tried to kill everyone. So R.I.P. Dick, by the way. He did not deserve to go like that. That's my final
He does not
thought.
die in the book. I know that. He doesn't die in the book. He actually lives and stays friends with Wendy and Danny after they escape. So that's a nice thing because the movie, both The Shining and Dr. Sleep are very sad.
I'm so upset. But to wrap up your question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just to wrap up my question. I'm just very glad that even though we're living in like very just random times, like, and we're like stuck inside and stuff like that, I'm very glad that like I'm not snowed in anywhere. I have like delivery services and internet, because otherwise I would be doing stuff to like annoy people, or like doing stuff that might get me in trouble, or so, something along those lines, like stuff like you don't need to do like at all, and it's just like you're not benefiting from this. So ultimately Jack did not benefit from trying to murder his family, is essentially what I'm saying.
No, he did not.
The end.
On the flip side, I like the kind of visual motif of the maze throughout this whole film. So like the way that he uses the camera, there's a lot of tracking shots like throughout the hotel, and it's like really like a snake. It's like winding through everywhere. It doesn't really make sense, like the direction and like why they're walking that way, but it just feels like they're moving through a maze of some sort. And then there's the obvious physical maze, which is another conspiracy theory of whether it's like actually real or not, or if it's like just kind of a projection of Danny's mind moving his way through the hotel and like through everything that's happening. And then the like
this all actually happened at a Best Western.
the like little miniature maze that's in the house. It's like, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And then so like there's a lot of visual cues of like a maze motif throughout, and kind of like winding your way through this like isolating location. Like your mind is a maze, and like this physical location that you're in that's like keeping you isolated from other people. You can't see them because of like the complicated nature of where you are.
Right.
I think it's kind of interesting.
My new
So The
conspiracy theory is that
Yeah.
it was set at a Best Western.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, Danny used that, like, the entire time he was there, he and his mom would just go out to the maze and like do it all the time because they had nothing else to do. So he
Mhm.
got to know it by heart because he did it so many times. So when he lured Jack into the maze later, he like knew exactly where he was going, and he like knew to like backtrack his steps and like hide to like
Mhm.
trap Jack in there, who hadn't done the maze before, because he
Right.
was focused on his own descent into madness inside the hotel. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Using the like time when you have nothing else to do but to like get really, really good at this one thing, which in Danny's case was like riding his bike around the hotel and figuring out the maze. So
Yeah.
he had all of that stuff going, using it to his advantage in the end, which was
He was
pretty
well
cool.
equipped.
Yes. So with all that said, we can finally move on to Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
So I'll give the quick stats on Dr. Sleep.
Okay.
Dr. Sleep is a 2019 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Mike Flanagan. It is based on the 2013 novel of the same name by Stephen King, a sequel to King's 1977 novel, The Shining.
Cool.
So do you want to give a little spiel on Dr. Sleep?
Okay, y'all. So, first we start right after The Shining happened. Danny's still a child. He and Wendy go to Florida because they never want to see snow again. And that's like the same reason why Dick was in Miami, which I kind of liked that. So that was like a cute little touch. He's like, I don't want to be near snow. No. No. So, and I understand why now. Dick is a ghost because unfortunately he met his demise in the last movie, The Shining, for those of you who do not know. And he comes back to Danny as a ghost, and Danny's like all PO'd. He's like, you said these things weren't gonna hurt me. And Dick's like, yeah, so my shining is like not as powerful as yours. Like, you're wildin'. So he's like, here's this like box trick my grandma showed me. It's where you just like stuff demons in a mental box and lock them away forever. Danny's like, great, cool, thanks. Continue to be my guardian angel, please. And Dick's like, you got it. So kind of moves on from there pretty much to Danny is now an adult in the year of our Lord 2011. And Danny is just a mess. Like, Danny is just not doing great, guys. He's an alcoholic, just like his dad. He's just not doing great. He was like hooking up with chicks and then stealing their money. That was like his rock bottom, essentially. So he goes to New Hampshire, meets this absolute angel named Billy.
He deserved
very
better.
sad.
We'll get there.
Okay, so he meets Billy. Billy helps him turn his life around. Danny realizes that he can use his like shine to like help people in hospice, like just pass on easily. Like, he's not murdering people, which I just thought was really funny. Because I'm like, yeah, I get it. He works in hospice, so like everyone's gonna die. But it just cracked me up because like I was like, you know, if somebody found out he was in the room at the exact moment all these people were dying, an investigation would absolutely be opened on this guy. And I said that to my roommate. I was like, how have the police not like at least looked into this once, you know? So he sobers up. There's a little girl a couple towns over. Her name is Abra, like abracadabra, which I thought was very cute. And she lives with her mom and dad. She's very adorable. And she clearly has the shining because she was playing piano. The parents put her to bed. They wake up in the middle of the night. The piano's still playing, but nobody's at the bench. So that kind of sets the precedent, like, oh, and she can also, like, make spoons fly. So it kind of sets the stage, like, this gal is pretty powerful as well. And then we see this, like, caravan of people going around, and they're just slurping up souls of people with The Shining. Rebecca Ferguson, who is fine.
A queen.
Oh, absolute queen. She and her group of vagabonds, they are like baddies who eat people with the shining, or who display like powerful shining. Because I guess like technically everybody has a little bit of shine, but they target the ones with like an exorbitant amount of shine. Mm-hmm. So they turn this one girl who can like convince you to do anything just with her voice. So anyway, just to establish all the main characters, we fast forward 8 years. Danny has been sober for 8 years. He's slaying it at the hospice, slaying old people at the hospice. He and this adorable ass cat are just murdering bitches. I'm kidding. He's not. He's just helping them die. With his voice, not his actions. So he and Abra have been communicating over the last 8 years. Like she can just like pop a message on this like wall in his apartment, and he will write back in chalk to communicate with her. And so they've only communicated through this wall shining ordeal. Abra has this horrible, horrible vision. The evil peeps found this boy out in Iowa or Idaho or something like that. They annihilate him. So like they have to like torture people with the shining, because that like purifies their steam, they call it, which I'm like, that's their soul, you freaks. So sorry, I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. I just have to establish that. So then Abra finds Danny. Danny's like, nah girl, get away from me. I don't want to help you. Like, don't use your shine. Like, it's not good. Dick shows up and he's like, hey, just so you know, this is the last time I'm gonna see you. You better help this girl because I helped you and I died. So you gotta pay it forward. And Danny's like, fine, I'm a good guy now. Like, he's always been a good guy, but he has demons. You know what I mean? So he somehow convinces Billy that he's not just losing it. They drive out to Iowa, dig up this boy's body, take the glove of the baseball boy because Abra wants to use it to track the evil people, tracks them. She has an altercation in Shine World with Rebecca Ferguson. Then they all just have a shootout. A bunch of Shine people die. The snake girl, the one who can convince people to do stuff with just her voice, tells Billy to kill himself. And then he does it. And I'm still not over it because it happened too fast. And then Abra gets kidnapped by Crow Daddy, who then murders her father. Yeah, Danny goes and he like saves her, but then they have to go back to the hotel. That was the craziest part. The hotel in Colorado to do the final face-off because they need as much like power and like weird demon forces as possible to like take her down because she's just sucking up steam left, right, and center. She's just like absolutely juicing off of some like shine spirit. She goes to the hotel. They have like a showdown. It's kind of weird. And then at the last possible second, like Danny's about to die because she's like taking his steam out. He like unboxes all of the demons that he like locked away in his little boxes, and they eat her. And then he kicks Abra out. He's like, girl, get out of here. Cause he's starting to turn into like this like demon guy. And then he just blows up the hotel. It's great. The end.
Yep. I really, really, really like this movie. I think
I really, really liked it too.
Super underrated. I'm like really upset that it didn't get more attention. It came out last year, so I'm pretty sure like the more people watch it and the more people kind of get over the fact that it's a Shining sequel, people will like it and it'll gain more attention. But it's really well done. I think Mike Flanagan did a great job.
I have so many things to say, but you go first with your thoughts because I always go first with my thoughts.
I mean, like I said, I really like it. I think I really like the decision to recast some of the characters, like Shelley Duvall's character Wendy, and Little Danny, and Dick, and Jack Nicholson. Like, they were all recast by different actors in this movie. I think it was a great decision instead of doing weird CGI. Because I feel like if they did CGI, it would have taken me out of the movie completely.
I was also worried they were gonna like somehow try and like clip in scenes from. Mm-hmm. But then when I realized, I was like, oh no, they recast it. They did a great job recasting. Yeah, so I said that to my roommate. I was like, I'm really glad they just recast it and just like filmed it the exact same way.
Yeah. Fun fact. So the guy who plays Jack Torrance at the end of Doctor Sleep, he plays Elliot from E.T.
I looked him, or my roommate looked him up, and she told me that, and I was like, oh, no way.
I know he worked with Mike Flanagan on The Haunting of Hill House. So they kind of like became buddies, and I guess that's how he became connected to the project. But I think I've seen a lot of people giving him shit for not doing a great Jack Nicholson, but I'm like, he was convincing to me. Like, he got the essence, and that's all you needed. Like, I didn't need like a cheesy Jack Nicholson performance. I just needed to like know that that's who it was. And he's a different person now. He's Lloyd, and he's part of the hotel. So like, it worked for me.
Right. Yeah, it took me a second. I was like, I think this is supposed to be his dad, because like you said, they obviously recast everybody. Like, could you imagine Jack Nicholson now being like, I'm still young?
You're
like,
did
Jack,
the de-aging thing. They pulled an Irishman and like.
Yeah. So no, I'm really glad. Like I said, like you said, I'm glad they recast everybody. But once I was like watching him, I was like, the way he's talking to him, like the way Danny is talking to Lloyd, he obviously knows this person. So I was like, oh. So I was watching this with my roommate, so she was there. I was like, is this supposed to be Jack? And she just was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. So I liked it. I agree that if they had like just tried to like clip in like the movie, or had tried to like bring the old cast back, pretend like 40 years has not gone by, that would not have been good. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Is all I'm
I
saying.
also really thought I think the casting overall in this movie was just stellar. Like, Ewan McGregor, chef's kiss.
I love Ewan
amazing.
McGregor.
Rebecca Ferguson. I will go in deep on like the True Knot and like the villains in this movie, but she in particular just like killed it. She slayed it. Every time she was on screen, I was like, give me more of this. And yeah.
You know what I love the most about her? First of all, you know who she reminded me of, like, in a weird way? Like, this is not related to the Shining universe at all. She reminded me of Sigourney Weaver's character from Holes.
Okay.
Just like a sassy bad bitch. You know
like,
what I
the
mean?
vibes
Like, I guess
are
like
the same.
I guess I really am drawn to those characters. Like, not like I don't want to like suck souls out of children. Like, let's be reasonable. Which both Sigourney Weaver and Rebecca Ferguson did in different movies in different ways. Open to interpretation. So I think the reason I'm just like, I guess my point of contention with like Holes review aside real quick, and I understand it was based off a book, but like they make a lot of powerful females like the bad guy for being like smart and just sassy. They make them smart and sassy, but they make them bad because like they're just trying to like look out for themselves and their family. Like, I mean, I'm like really trying to like paint Sigourney Weaver's character in a good light right now. Like, she's like she's a bad bitch, but like she's trying to like fulfill her family legacy. Like, I don't think she's actually supposed to be a bad person. Like, she's just like unfortunately using child labor. Like, that's the bad part. Like, that's where she becomes a bad person is where she's like trying to justify like forced child labor into, you know, fulfilling her family legacy. But like, she's just like so hell-bent on that goal because that's all she's been taught her whole life. Anyway, back to Dr. Sleep. So I get it. Like, I get Rebecca Ferguson's character. I'm just so drawn to like these people who are like, they're bad with like
you like complete. They're just like really well written and fleshed out. So like, you know, their motivations and you understand the conflict on both sides. So it just makes for a really compelling story, a really compelling movie. And that brings me to Abra, who's also just like a super bad bitch, like like
like, don't get me wrong, the whole movie I was rooting for Abra to like wreck Rebecca Ferguson's shit, was like wreck Rose's shit. But at the same time, I was like if she wins, she wins, guys. Like, we can't be mad about that.
Yeah. You just like, you understand her. So like it's easier to like understand both sides, which and just like her performance, like I said, it's like, just give me more of this. I love it. Like, she's just killing it. Because she's not like creepy. She's like just really charismatic, hypnotizing, which is like the point. So
And very like adaptive, like, and that's like the whole point, or like not the whole point, but like that's a big thing to remember when you're talking about them, is like they've been around for centuries.
yeah.
Like she has been around for probably like 300 years at minimum, you know?
And they like, I think the movie does a really good job of, they make us understand them, but then they remind us that they're like horrible people by doing the baseball boy in. Like that scene.
Yeah, I was like,
the first time I watched it, I was like, whoa. Like, because you don't ever see child murder in films, at least like that graphic. A lot of times it's like alluded to, or it's done off screen, but you never see it. This, they like went in, and it's Jacob Tremblay. He's not credited in the movie, and that's on purpose, because if people knew that, if people knew that he was in this movie, he kind of just pops up. And the first time I watched this movie, I was like, whoa, I didn't know he was in this movie. And then I
saw him and I was like, is that one kid that's like in all of these movies? And sure enough, it was.
And then they torture him for hours, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like they are not shying away from this, and he did amazing. It's a not easy scene to watch at all, but it serves a really important purpose in like reminding the audience that like, no, these people are really awful. Like they do awful things to innocent people. And like making you watch this child get murdered, I think established that. And then after that, we are introduced to Abra kind of officially. That's when she makes her grand entrance into the movie officially, and shit starts happening.
So that scene, so like when she's like looking in on his murder, and like, you know, she's feeling his pain and everything. So like that scene, like when she was like freaking the fuck out, and then like the, you know, walls shook and everything, and Ewan McGregor and Danny was like woken up, and like the wall exploded and it said Red Rum. That, I don't know why I did, but it literally gave me chills. I was like, oh. I was like, yes. And then he looks in the mirror and it says murder, and I was just like, just like The Shining. And then he was like, oh, this is like for realsies. And I was like, imagine like his landlady comes in like, oh, let me just like check in on that leaky faucet he was talking about. Excuse me?
Murder.
And then like baseball boy, and she's like, let me do some Googling. And then like sees that, and she's like, where's
murder baseball boy?
Yeah. Murder baseball boy.
Yeah. I really liked the connection between The Shining and what happens in Doctor Sleep. How like a lot of the imagery from The Shining that pops up in Doctor Sleep is kind of like representative of how like he's trying to outrun it, but he just can't. So like when the word murder pops up on his wall and it's reflected back to him as Red Rum, it's like you're trying to escape the Overlook Hotel, but you can't. Like it's part of you. It's like your fate. And like there's a lot of different things like that. Like the scene where he's talking to the actor that's in everything but refuses to be famous. You know who I'm talking about? The like guy that he's like, your watch is over here. The guy who like gives him the job at the like.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
He's always the villain. He's always the villain in like,
he's in everything. He's like Stephen King's Wonder Boy. That scene where he's like talking to him in his office is like the set is an exact replica of when Jack Nicholson was talking to the hotel manager.
Yes, I did notice that.
Just like a visual cue to be like, you're trying to run away from what happened to you and to the Overlook, but you can't. Really appreciated that attention to detail and like thematic visual motifs going on.
What I like more about Dr. Sleep is, they dive more into like the individual power of The Shining, and like how it's universal, but like there's varying degrees. So like I guess like my one like quote unquote like continuity error I guess is like, so remember in the beginning of Dr. Sleep when when we're still with young Danny, and he's like pissed off at Dick because Dick was like, oh, it's pictures in the book, and Danny's like, no, it's not, my dad tried to kill me. And Dick was like, well, your shining is much more powerful than mine. And then again, when they were talking, when Crow and Rose were talking about Abra, and they were like, oh, she was shining, like looking into your mind or whatever from like 1,000 miles away. That's not possible. Like, that's never happened before. So like in The Shining, I'm trying to like sew this together. In The Shining, Dick like shined into Danny's mind from Miami. Like, that's well over 1,000 miles away from where Danny was. So either his shine like was more powerful than Dick realized, or it's a continuity error between like the two movies, because Dick was like looking through Danny's eyes to like what Danny was doing, like when he was going into room like 237 or whatever. And then in the movie they're like, oh, people can't look in from like 1,000 miles away, she must be a white whale. And I'm like, well, Dick did it, and he says his shining wasn't that powerful. So I'm like,
well, Dick didn't do it. It was Danny. Like, Danny was reaching out to Dick, and Danny
I thought he
is
reached
like,
out to him the first time, and then he was able to.
Danny was using Tony to like reach out to Dick in The Shining, and Danny is like supposedly just as powerful or like as Abra. Like, they have like, he's like super powerful, but he's been suppressing it all these years because he's been running away from it using alcohol and whatever. And so when like at the end when he unboxes all of his demons, she's like, how did we miss you? And it's because like he's been suppressing it. But I think that it was Danny that reached out to Dick in the beginning, and so it is a rare thing.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. So I was like, yeah, so that's why I was like confused at first. I mean, not that it really matters, like it really does not matter. I'm just nitpicking. I'm like trying to find a thing I don't like about the movie just to be like saucy. But the truth of the matter is, like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So like I'm just gonna rave about it for the next however many minutes we record for, because
I guess the main criticisms that I've heard, and that I kind of agreed with the first time I watched it, was like the last third of the movie when they go back to the Overlook, felt a little bit like, remember this, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit of fan service, but I think that it was done well. Like, it wasn't over the top, and it felt appropriate.
Like, some of it was necessary. Like, some of it, like him going into the boiler room. Like, and obviously he has to enter the hotel somehow. So, like, why wouldn't they be like, look, here's the wall of photos. Like, that's super famous from the last movie. Like, I get him, like, doing a lap around the hotel. You're like, okay, like, relax,
he's, like,
buddy.
waking it up with his presence.
Like, you walk through the door and the Overlook knows you're there.
And I think the, like, dialogue in the last third kind of was lacking. Like, you don't know where you're standing. Like, it felt a little cheesy to me.
They said it like 5 times.
Yeah, I was able to forgive it. Like, I feel like that part wasn't necessarily built up much. It kind of was supposed to land as like this big, powerful, like, ooh, got him statement, and it didn't really.
The only time I thought it was like pretty good was the first time they used it when she was in front of the typewriter. Like, I was like, oh, that's his typewriter. He like wrote really crazy stuff on that. But the time when he was like being taken over by like the hotel, and she was like, you don't know where you're standing, and he was like, well, you know, like, this is the hotel. This is me. She's like, no, it's Danny's body. And then I was like, okay,
sure.
That was my one eye roll, I will admit.
I think the last third is the director's attempt to kind of merge the two the two worlds of like Stephen King and Kubrick. And it's like a really hard thing to do. Like, he's making a sequel to the movie The Shining, but also adapting Stephen King's book, which is a response to Kubrick's movie. Like, he wrote Dr. Sleep as kind of a like, no, this is my story, this is like what happens.
He really held on to that for so
Yeah.
long. 'Cause he published it in
Yep.
2013. He
Yep.
really did not.
Yep, he did.
I mean, it's a famous movie, so wherever he went, like, he was reminded of it. So I get that.
So I like the director of Dr. Sleep had to juggle these two things, and while also creating like a cohesive thing for
Right.
everybody to kind of enjoy. And I
Yeah.
personally think he did a great job, but that's what the last third of the movie is. It's like, because in the original Shining, like the book,
Mm-hmm.
the Overlook Hotel burns down.
Right.
So in Dr. Sleep, that none of that happens, because it's already been burned down. But in the movie, The Shining, he freezes. So it's like complete opposites of things that happen, you know. But
Yeah.
in Dr. Sleep, he kind of brings that back in by having Danny have the same fate that Jack did in the book, where
Right.
he goes back and he becomes haunted and like terrorized by the hotel, and he blows it up by going to the boiler room.
But he like
And-
ends the cycle, which is
Yeah.
which was like what he wanted. But he was like, if I gotta go down, I gotta go down. You know what I mean? Because he was, like you said, he was being taken over by the hotel, so he had just
Mhm.
enough like shine and gumption left in him to like get Abra out and then blow it up.
Yeah.
So I did like that. I kind of liked that it was like, I mean, of course it made me sad that Danny died, because like when she like when the monsters or like the demons or whatever started to like attack him, I was like, is he gonna die? And then he was able to like bring it all home, literally like just run it back to home base, start it all over, or like, you know, end the circle and just burn it to the ground. And I was like, I was sad, but I was like, you know what, that was like appropriate, because like he wasn't gonna be able to go back to his like
Yeah.
normal life. Like, Billy's dead.
People think that he murdered all those old people, so, and the
Right.
baseball.
Yeah. The the sheriff's department's like currently like working with the FBI to find him. Because now they also probably think that, you know, he kidnapped Abra.
Yeah, and murdered her dad.
Right. That was like, because you know they have a ring. Like, did you see that house? They have a Ring doorbell. They saw Ewan McGregor and Billy going into that house and leaving, and then
With Abra, yep.
Yeah, leaving with Abra, and like that was just, yeah, it was over. It was over for Danny. Let's just put it that way. Life in the United States was not going to be a viable option for Danny. He was definitely on FBI's top 10 most wanted. But my favorite scene, speaking of like all of Danny's potentially criminal acts, was when they were in the car and the mom calls Abra and she's like, oh my God, where are you? Are you okay? And she's like, I love you, and just throws the phone out the window. I laughed so hard because I was like, yeah, that's like all you can do. It's like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm in the car with my friend Dan, like, bye. So she was like, I don't know, like, I love you, yeet, like, can't track this.
Yeah.
So funny. I was like, that was a very real scene.
Well, I think we can like go on and on and on about
Oh my gosh.
Dr. Sleep, but do you have any kind of final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Yes, I do. So, like I said, I love like the more in-depth look into The Shining, like the abilities of The Shining. I loved that like this was, it's like hard to explain. So I really like that like Abra was like more willing to embrace it and just be like, hey, like this is my jam, like it or not. But she also understood how like embracing it could be like problematic. Like her parents like wouldn't understand. She could be like, you know, taken away. So like she didn't want to use it, but then like meeting Danny was like beneficial for both of them because like he learned, like he understood like what he needed to do to like essentially like pay his debt to like the universe. And then she kind of understood like this is what could happen if you don't embrace your shine and just like, you know, be frank with your family, because like Danny had so many regrets from like his childhood with his mother because like she couldn't look at him, and the scene where he like changed his eye color, like when he was like a kid, he stared into the mirror and his like eyes turned blue. I was like, it made me so sad. Like, he just had so many, like, because he, like, was never fully honest, like, with his family, like, with his mother, he, like, lost out on so much. And, like, who knows, like, how that could have, like, I mean, it doesn't really, at least in the movie, explain how she died or, like, what was her cause. She was just, like, you know, stressed
Yeah.
forever,
Mhm.
constantly stressed. So I'm sure that played a lot into her health, but, like, he felt like he couldn't show her because she already looked at him weird. So,
Yeah.
like, it was a lot of, like, understanding that, like, your family is there to, like, love you and support you for the most part. And you have to, like, trust the people you love and, like, who love you, and just basically, like, embrace yourself for who you are, which I thought was, like, very heartwarming considering all the tragedy I was dragged through watching this movie.
Yes, I agree.
So A+ film.
Yes. I'm glad that this was our first double feature on the Another Picture Show podcast. It was a journey, and I had a great time watching both of them back to back. Like I said, I would not recommend if you're, like, on a time crunch, but it was fun.
No, I was, like, watching The Shining while I was, like, working out and, like, clips, and, like, I was, like, so in the movie together through various mediums, because, like, I'd seen The Shining before, obviously not Dr. Sleep, so I was like, I want to definitely just sit down and watch Dr. Sleep, and I will get through as much of The Shining as I can, because this week has been hellacious, but we did it.
We did indeed. So I guess with that, we can start to wrap up here. I had a lot of fun talking about both of these movies with you, and I will see you next time. For those listening, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter at @AnotherPicPod, and you can follow us on Instagram at Another Picture Show. With that, I will see you next time, Madeline.
Damn straight. You have a great day. I love you.
I love you too.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.